Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, the podcast where mothers share their powerful stories of healing and empowerment. I am your host, Amanda Quigg, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and advocate. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories of mothers who have overcome adversity, found their fierce feminine power, and embraced transformative parenting. Whether you're a mother driven to fight for your children or someone with a story burning inside you, this podcast is for you. Together, we'll explore themes of resilience, self-trust, and healing from our traumatic experiences, all spotlighting the profound journeys of awakened mothers. Join us for a space of naked authenticity, deep inspiration, and genuine connection. Embrace the divine feminine and discover your own warrior mama within. Welcome to Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Awakened Motherhood. I'm your host, Amanda, and I am super excited today to introduce Sarah. Sarah is a mother of 3 living children, and she has a daughter in heaven. She has been through infertility and 3 pregnancy losses, including the stillbirth of her daughter, Jasmine. She now uses her experience to help other families going through pregnancy or infant loss. Welcome, Sarah. My heart goes out to you already just reading that. And, this is such an important topic. We don't talk about it. It is, I remember when I first got pregnant with my first child, and there's this don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody because you might lose the baby and then you'll be all alone because you didn't tell anybody, right? Like that's really what happens at the end or other end of it. And I really applaud you coming out and talking about the whole spectrum of loss and infertility, because when we hold those things down, we never feel like we can release it. So anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, you're definitely right about that. There's something that we don't talk about yet. It happens to so many of us.
Reflecting, in the state of the current world right now, my own body fertility stuff, even very recently. And, I've actually been pregnant 7 times, but I have 3 children. And some of those were choices and some of those were not choices. And so there's this whole spectrum of things that when you ask how many children you have, I have 3. You don't ask about what you've went through and what that means because that's too taboo. So let's really dig in. And I want to, understand a little bit more about your story and journey and how you came to recognize how important it is to talk about this stuff.
So I'll try to keep it short. It's full of a lot of stuff. But yeah, so basically, at 16, I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Basically, the important part of it that is relevant to fertility is that you don't ovulate regularly. So it makes it hard to get pregnant. So I had to go through fertility treatment. Ended up getting pregnant with my son the cycle after a failed treatment and gave birth to him. So he was my first. And then I had 2 early losses. So I had a chemical pregnancy and then I had an early miscarriage. Also doing fertility treatment through this time, which wasn't IVF, but it was other fertility treatment with injectable medications and stuff. And then got pregnant with my daughter, Jasmine. At our 13-week ultrasound, we found out she had what's called a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which means there was a hole on one side of her diaphragm, it didn't fully form. And it allowed all the organs, like her liver and I don't remember which other organs, but it pushed up into her chest cavity and then compressed her lungs. So we were kind of told, hey, you've got basically a 50-50 chance of her making it. We went home. I did all this research, found a specialist. I was like, hey, we're gonna fight for you, And come to find out later, after an amnio, she also had mosaic trisomy 15, which is also, that's even more rare than CDH. The doctors are kind of like, I don't know what to tell you because we don't know anything about this.
We don't see these things together.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so we still were going to go see the specialist. And ultimately, we made it to 32 weeks and she developed high drops, which is fluid around her lungs in between like her skin and then around her brain. And so she was stillborn at 32 weeks. Yeah, and that was a really tough time. And then after that, we did get pregnant again. We did fertility treatment 6 months later. We had my rainbow daughter. And then just a couple of years ago, I had a surprise pregnancy, which was shocking because that's one of those things like, hey, that happens to other people, but not to you, when you've gone through infertility.
You had so much hard time getting pregnant. You didn't think
yes,
without that effort, it would work.
So yeah, so she was my pot of gold. And then, so I have the 3 losses, 3 living children. And basically the other 2 were too early. So we never saw a heartbeat, didn't know the gender, but Jasmine was a girl. So 3 daughters and a son.
Oh, thank you for sharing. And, as you were talking, I want to kind of touch on something that I don't think people always actualize when they talk about, having a baby born at 32 weeks. Like, you have to go through the delivery process. It's not, a miscarriage and early and a chemical pregnancy. It's a different thing than when you have to go through the full birth process and your body has to actually go into labor or you have to have a C-section. They're basically a fully formed baby, just not at full term.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of those things you don't really think about. But yeah, 32 weeks. I mean, she was a little over 4 pounds. I still, that's one of the things that I always remember is when she was placed in my arms, like just feeling like the weight of her. Cause it's like, I knew she was real, but it just like that, like solidified that, just like feeling her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that while the others still had weight, it's different and it's not worse or better. It's a very different healing process because your body goes through a different thing. Like your milk can come in, your body can like think that you delivered and that you have a baby, and yet you don't take one home.
Yeah. And my milk did come in and I was just like, please don't, but it did. And so yeah, I was putting the cabbage leaves in my bra trying to get it to dry up. And yeah, it's one of those things that you're never really prepared for until it happens. But same postpartum as somebody who had a living baby, you just don't have the living baby to make it better.
And you have all the same hormones, right? You have all the same highs and lows and everything else going on. And can you talk a little bit about, what that process was and like what supported you through? Because I know that there are people out there who go through this and don't have any support or don't feel like they know what to do.
Definitely my mom and my mom, my dad, my brother, my husband, they were all like my biggest supporters. My husband and I, we were able to grieve together, which was really helpful. But then we also had to do kind of our own grieving separately since we grieve in different ways. My family was always a big support and, I had supportive friends, but it still feels really lonely, even when you're surrounded by that support. And I didn't really know how big the lots community was at that time, like online. And I didn't find it until a couple of years later, but it would have been really helpful to have like right after my loss.
Yeah. So really, it sounds like finding people who like have been there and who get it and who share that experience so that you know you're not alone and that you have a place where if you're having a hard day, you're having these thoughts, you have a place to go.
Yeah, definitely. That was what has really helped me. And then kind of turning that around to like start helping other people because I knew how lonely it felt. And I know that there are people that had less support from family and friends than what I had. And so I didn't really want anybody to have to go through it alone.
And what a beautiful gift that she gave you in that sense, right? Because in a lot of ways, I know for me, helping other people with what I walked through actually is really healing for me. Like it's a double whammy, right? I'm helping them and that feels good that I'm helping, but even more, I'm like learning more about my own experience as I'm doing that. I'm curious if it's the same in your situation.
Yeah, definitely it is. It's very healing. And just knowing that even if like it's just one person that you're helping, like that you made a difference. And I think that that's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is. And, the world is a chaotic place and people are so focused on like this external reality and the economy and the government and the light. But if you're going through really internal suffering and you're not outward faced, you're really inward faced and it is very, very lonely there.
Yeah. And, I think we're expected to just go back to normal, like as fast as possible, go back to work, go back to all your responsibilities. And you're over here like, I'm still hurting, but I have to pretend I'm not and that everything's okay.
Yeah. And that is really one of the most harmful components, because it's not that grieving is bad. It's that pain is bad. It's this pretending that it's not there that's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked about this in other avenues, but when you go from being not a mom to a mom, that is a huge initiation. Like the person you were before you were mom, like you can't recognize the person who exists now, because so much you kind of almost die and you turn into a new person as you birth a child. But that continues to evolve with each experience you have. It's not like, okay, there's child-free me and child me, but there's the person I am with one child and the person I am with two children and the person I am with this loss and the person I am now, because your life is never going to be the same. And it's like there's not only this grieving for what was lost, but there's a loss of self that happens. And, I'm curious what you would say to somebody who's really feeling like they don't know who they are anymore.
I think, just like you said, the important thing to remember is that you're never going to go back to the person you were before. And I think you just have to give yourself time to figure out who the new you is. And, like things that you don't even expect, like it'll change, you may not want to be around babies anymore. You may not want to be around pregnant people anymore. It's okay to say no to those baby showers. It's okay to not go to those things. You may, feel different about family in general. You may have new priorities, like things that just you thought were important and you're like, no, now they're not. I mean, there's just like an ongoing list of ways. And I think you just have to give yourself grace and know that it's constantly just learning who this new version of yourself is.
Yeah. And it's really a mind blowing thing. But, I'm curious, obviously then you went on to have a oopsies baby, but not in a bad way. Just, I wasn't expecting that. My sense is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my sense is that was even like another level of healing for you, because, a lot of times, at least I've heard from people who experience fertility challenges, they feel like they're broken a little bit. Like their body doesn't work like it's supposed to. And the cycles don't happen like it's supposed to. And they need outside help to do what some people seem to do so easily. And I personally, my experience is the opposite. I get pregnant too easy. And that has its own challenges. But, the people who don't follow this is what a woman should do and how it should be, like how much did that shift and change, especially when you discovered that you actually could get pregnant without outside support?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time definitely being angry at my body for that. Like, all you have to do is ovulate. Why can't you just do it right? Like, why do I have to fight you on this all the time? And, another thing too is that I never thought that I would just have that, oh my gosh, like surprise, it's a pregnancy. It's always like, okay, we did this treatment, so let's wait this number of days and either take a test or wait for a blood test. Like, that's not fun, so
No.
it was really, I mean, I was obviously shocked. Like, what is happening here?
Are you sure?
I know, like I kind of had a feeling because I still was tracking my cycles. But I just never thought I would. But and then I was like, my period's not here. This is kind of weird. And I was like, well, I'll take a test. But then it came up right away, and I'm just like, oh, okay. Like my body can do it now. But no, it definitely did, I think, contribute to that healing and knowing, okay, like my body gave me this. And I do think that Jasmine sent her two subsequent sisters to us. So I think it was kind of a gift.
That is really, what a beautiful way to look at it. What a beautiful way to look at it and be connected, continue to stay connected to her as part of the rest of your family. It's really amazing. And, now today, going through all of that, you've turned that pain into, the kind of a way to help other people, right? You not only support people that have gone through it, but you have a whole other host of things that you're doing. Do you want to share a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So first I started with Pregnancy After Loss Support, which is an organization that supports women who are pregnant after loss, which is, pregnancy after loss is one of those really hard things to go through, that it's not a regular pregnancy. It's got its whole host of like different, unique, full of anxiety thing. But I started writing for them after my loss. And then when I was pregnant with my rainbow daughter, I was writing for them. And I was like, I still want to do more. So I created my Journey for Jasmine account, and I had a rainbow skirt that I wore for my maternity pictures. And I mean, like when I say it's a skirt, it's a huge skirt. It's really huge. It's like 5 pounds when you mail it.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And so I started sending that around to other lost families. And so they take pictures with it and then write up their story. And these are just people who have been through any kind of loss. So, it could be anything from an embryo loss, a chemical pregnancy, all the way to infant loss or child loss. Any kind of loss.
It's whatever they're defining, right? There's no hierarchy of your loss is bigger or worse than mine.
And you don't have to be pregnant or have a rainbow baby, because it's all about trying to find your rainbow again after loss, which for a lot of people, it is a rainbow baby, but for a lot of people, it's not. It's something else. Maybe they can't have kids. Maybe they don't want to try again. Just whatever the reason. So it's, just to help people be able to share their stories, and then also raise awareness for just how many people go through it. And we just hit over 450 stories shared.
Wow.
And it's been to 49 states. We're just missing one state. And
what state?
Wyoming.
Okay. So anybody in Wyoming.
I know. I'm like, why can't I find somebody here? And then, it's been to several other countries as well.
Wow. And so this thing that you started that supported you and now touching the lives of so many others, and you're giving them this gift too. And, I think that, my listeners, if following me, are going to understand that. And any new listeners that come forward, the act of actually writing out your story, actually processing it and getting it there is like one of the most cathartic things. It can be challenging. It can be very emotional, but it's like you kind of are letting go of a piece of it that can move through you in a different way. And to do so knowing that story also helps others. Like it's such an amazing thing that you're inviting people to do, and they get to read other people's stories and feel like they're a part of something.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of people who said that same thing exactly. Like, I didn't know how I was going to write it, or it started off really hard. I didn't think I could do it. But then once they start writing, they can't stop writing, and they're just letting it all out. And, they just say how healing it was, even though it's hard.
It's one of my favorite healing tools to write out your story, because you're writing it out from the other side. Like you've lived through this. In a lot of ways, you lived through your worst fear, and yet you're alive and you're okay. You may have a hard time. You may be processing, but you look back and you see a different perspective than you did as you were living it, and you can almost invite that into your system. And so I love that you're doing that in this specific thing, and that this is out there for people to see and to connect to, and to know they're not alone, because they can see all of these other people. Do you ever publish? Is this a compilation thing, or is it just a page people go to? What's the plan?
Yeah, so right now I put them all on the website, so at Journey for Jasmine, and then so that's where the full story is, because a lot of them, they do get long because people like to write, which I get it.
It's great.
And then I also post them on my social media, so my Instagram and Facebook, and I kind of shorten them up a little bit for there. But yeah, I've been posting them on there, and it's actually pretty cool that there's been some people who will send me messages and be like, I can't wait for my turn to use it, or I've been following you for 2 years and it's finally my turn, or, it's just cool to know that it's making such an impact.
Wow. What a beautiful way to give back in a sense, and what a beautiful way for your daughter to have such a presence amongst other people, because it really feels like her essence is in all of it, supporting and healing everybody.
And everything I do is, in honor of her, to keep her memory alive. It's, I've talked before about how, we still parent our children, even if they're not here. And this is my way of parenting her, is to keep her name out there and do things like this in honor of her.
That's really amazing. Do your other children, how do they interact with her, and do you keep her alive in other ways? I'm curious. I've embedded all of that.
So my son was the only one that was actually here, was actually born when she was here, and he was 3. So he kind of remembers. He didn't understand it at the time, but he kind of remembers now. And as he's gotten older, he's asked more questions and, expressed sadness at missing her and things like that. My Rainbow is now 5, so she now understands that she has another sister. So actually, we took him to kindergarten the first day of, or like meet the teacher the other day, and she was like, "I have 2 sisters, but one died." Teacher's kind of like, yeah, I'm like, no, it's true. It is true. But just, they just kind of put it out there.
But she's putting it out there, and she's not putting this out there in this horrible thing, right? I think it's actually really beautiful when children, in their wonderful, innocence of it all, they don't recognize this as this pain and suffering and thing we have to hide. They're, if anything, celebrating. I've got 2 sisters.
Yeah.
Aren't I cool?
Yeah. I mean, I am glad that she does bring her up. And then, my youngest is too young to understand. But every year on her birthday, we either get a cake or a cupcakes, and I buy a candle for how old she would be. So we always light the candle, sing her happy birthday. We have a stocking for her at Christmas. I have a picture of her in my home office. We have little touches of her around the house. And we have I was gifted a weighted bear that weighs the same as what she weighed when she was born. And so we always try to include her in family photos and stuff. So sometimes they kind of fight over who gets to hold the Jasmine bear.
What a beautiful way to just keep her connected and a part of the journey. And what an amazing, from a soul mission perspective, that she came through like this to then have this healing opportunity for so many people and for you and your family. And it just, as hard as it is, right? It's this beautiful feeling to be surrounded by that kind of love.
I really hate, I hate when people say everything happens for a reason, or, don't tell me that crap. But at the same time, I do feel like it has led me to something greater.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would trade it all in an instant to get her back. But as I'm sure we all would, so.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's a totally valid and really real place to be. You can see the value of the experience and you can lean into it, but it doesn't mean you wouldn't prefer another choice.
Right.
And, there may be at some point where that changes, and that's okay too. Allow the process to be what it is. I don't know that I think I would consciously choose to go through what I went through. And still, I'm grateful now that I get to be where I am today. And so there's both things at the same time. And, humans are complicated. We're very complex. And, we can hold multiple truths. We can hold multiple versions of our reality, and that doesn't invalidate the other one. And I think it's really, really important to acknowledge those layers of ourselves and not hide away the grief components, because yes, there's value on the other side. We need to hold both. I love the way that you've done that and the way that you've embedded those abilities and things. And I'm sure there are still hard days.
Oh yeah, there are. And, I often find the days leading up to her birthday or things like that. Christmas time is always really hard, because that was when we were originally visiting the specialist, doing extra appointments. And then when we started to kind of find out more bad news after that. And then it just kind of, so from Christmas until her birthday in March, it's all hard. And then once I get past her birthday again, I'm okay, I made it another year. Let's take a breather, but definitely there are days that I could just see something or hear something, and, it just takes me right back there.
Yeah.
But I will say, with time, there are more good days than bad days.
Good. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. And I'm curious if you have words of wisdom, things that you would tell yourself, maybe things you heard or maybe things you wish you heard back then that you would tell somebody else, whether they're, going through this uncertainty of loss or they've just gone through a loss. Like, what would you tell your...
The best thing that I was told by one of the nurses was, whatever you are feeling right now is the right way to be feeling. And that has always stuck with me because, sometimes we feel, especially as women, we feel guilty for how we feel. Oh, I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be jealous that this person's pregnant, things like that. And it's like, hey, it's all part of the experience and it's not wrong. You are not a bad person. Like, it is okay to feel these things.
Yeah, your feelings are totally valid. 100%. And gosh, the people who beat ourselves up, especially as women, we beat ourselves up for having feelings. We're too much.
Normal feeling.
They're not over. My gosh. I can't tell you how many people I have worked with, not even just in this, about this, but in other ways where, because as a child they were programmed to, that you can't have that big feeling. You can't feel that. It makes other people uncomfortable. So you can't feel your feelings. And that deeply ingrains into us. And so then when we go through something where we can't hold it in anymore, and we not only let it out and are really uncomfortable by it, but we make ourselves incredibly wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so many times we're just expected to sacrifice our own mental health to not make other people uncomfortable. But then we're the ones who are sitting here suffering and feeling unsupported. And, that's not right.
No, that's where I'm like, no, the feelings are not the problem. Your judgments of the feelings are the problem.
And I know I'm right there with you. Like, we're our own worst critics,
Yes, we really are. We beat ourselves up. We make ourselves wrong. We're the biggest bully to ourselves than anybody else.
I know. I'm like, sometimes the things that I hear my brain say about myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, don't say that to me. I'm working on it,
Yeah. I always remind myself, and I wouldn't speak to my child that way, and it's not okay for me to speak to me that way.
Yes. That is a good way to, those things you would never say to them.
No. And you would be very angry if somebody else did.
I don't. You'd be over there ready to attack.
Right. Why do we let ourselves be such a bully just because of all of the stuff we've been carrying? And, when those big things come into our fields, whatever the traumatic event is, if we also are having a hard time, just processing emotions on a regular level, let alone, it's even more challenging and even more isolating. It's even more shameful. And it can be really hard to dig yourself out. And, I think it's really an invitation to everybody out there listening that no matter what you're going through, wherever you are, the feelings you're feeling, those are the right ones.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Just lean into them, and also kind of going along with that, don't try to stuff it down. If I know it is way easier to not deal with the grief, to pretend like nothing's wrong, to, go do whatever you're doing. But I promise you, because I did it, it'll just explode later and it'll be at the worst time possible and it'll be a lot worse. So don't do that.
Yeah. The mask is not the answer. The pretending is not the answer. I always try to think about, if I'm the less masked I am, the more real I am, I'm actually inviting everybody else to be real and, themselves and where they are while I'm doing it. And that's what I need, is more people to do that. So we just gotta do it, and we gotta get through. And I think that it's beautiful that we can, so many of the same ways that we go through hard things, there's a lot of parallels, even though I don't have that exact lived experience. There's a lot of ways that we process and feelings that we have and way we compartmentalize that are the same. And so really acknowledging that the lived experiences we have are teaching us so many components of how we get through these things that really can help other people. And I love how you're doing that. And will you go ahead and share, the website you have, and I'll put it all in the show notes for people, but how they can get in touch with you.
Sure, yeah. So I have my website, which is journeyforjasmine.com, that has all the rainbow skirt stories, and then it's got other, other articles about pregnancy loss and things like that. My social media is all Journey for Jasmine on pretty much on all of them except for Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. I don't know, it's too confusing for me. And then my podcast is Finding Hope After Loss, and that's just on any podcast platform.
Awesome. And you're interviewing other moms and sharing their stories there as well?
Yes. I wanted to take it a step further. And so and I've actually had a lot of my participants come on there too and share their story. There's just there's a different level to it when you're actually talking about it. I mean, writing is healing, but talking about it is healing in a different way. So,
yep. Yeah, no, I mean, I wrote a book, I gave a talk, I keep doing it. So I totally get it. There's so many different avenues, and you feel so many different things, and you get a different response, which gives you a different piece. And I really love how you've embedded that in such a supportive way, in such a heart-centered, kind way for people going through all of this. I think it's amazing. And I am so happy to be able to support and to share your story. And hopefully it's going to help those who are listening. And whether they have other children or not, it doesn't invalidate the loss that they have gone through.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for giving me a chance to share. I love every chance I get to share about her and about everything I'm doing in her honor.
Thank you. And I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you for joining us on Awakened Motherhood. I hope today's episode inspired you and offered support for your journey. Remember, your story has the power to ignite change, and your resilience is a testament to your strength as a mother. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Share it with other mothers who might benefit from our stories of empowerment and healing. I invite you to connect with me on social media platforms at Amanda Quick Healing, or visit my website, amandaquickhealing.com, for more information on other ways to work with me. Until next time, keep embracing your divine self and discovering your warrior mama within. Thank you for being part of Awakened Motherhood, where your story is the spark for change.